Casper began his career on YouTube over a decade ago and was really in that golden era of BritTubers who took over the world. He's collaborated with some of the biggest names in the space like JJ, Mr. Beast, Joe Sugg, and many others. And things were really flying for him. He was at the top of what seemed to be the most dominant space in the world. But then he decided to quit. And in this conversation, we talk about why. Why did Casper decide to leave it all to pursue a career as an entrepreneur? We deep dive into all of his businesses like MVE, Influencer.com, and Creator Ventures, as well as talk about how he's getting on in life, having come through such an incredible roller coaster journey. It's truly an amazing story, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Let's get into it with Casper.
It's about time.
It's about time, my friend. Yeah, it's
like
been a long time. It's been a long time.
When did we first... I almost was worried that you invited me on and then you realized you didn't actually want me.
Oh, no, never. You've been top of the list since we started this. Oh. But Casper, I wanted to talk about a number of things with you. Obviously, we were just talking about it as well. You've been doing amazing things for so long. It feels like a lifetime. You probably span now many different generations in terms of audience, in terms of groups. You're a wise old man of the game.
In my 20s still.
You're 20s still. That's it. But I'd love to know from the beginning, like, where did it all begin for you in terms of content, in terms of everything you're doing now? What was the starting point?
So it started in a bath. And
as most things do.
As most things do. It wasn't. I'm not talking about my mom having me in a bath. I'm talking about the fact that my first YouTube video I decided was, is bathing more difficult to do than showering because it's hot being in a bath, whereas when you're in a shower, it's a bit annoying, but it's not that hot when you get in. And that's my idea. That was my idea of content. And everyone's thinking, what the fuck is he talking about?
Looking back on that time, obviously everybody's gone and done incredible things in different ways, right? Yeah. Some people have settled down, have families, other people have carried on content in different ways, started businesses and so on. What is your reflection looking back on that time period in your life now?
I'm proud of myself, actually. You know, I was so brave and I did things that even today would scare the living shit out of me. But because I was so young, I took risks. Obviously very lucky to have an audience that supported those risks and wouldn't have been able to do anything without them. But like moving, overseas at 18, we were hopefully trailblazers for the next generation in terms of like trying to tell TV, look at us, like we can do stuff, working with brands for the first time. And I think, somehow I just maybe was surrounded by amazing people and they gave me the confidence. Yeah. But there's things I look back on, I'm like, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you sat in a room, making jokes with Kevin Hart or Seth Rogen. And, today I hope I would still be able to do that. But there was definitely a time between then and now where I got very insecure and I was like, I don't even know who that person is. I've learned that doing new things for me is very scary because I am, slightly insecure and I get anxious about things. But at the same time, if I don't do those new things, I get very sad. And so I have to keep pushing, keep feeling anxious, keep feeling like I'm doing new stuff to feel good about myself. Whereas I was avoiding stuff for a period and I'm proud I'm not doing that anymore.
So when you were at that point where obviously things were booming, you were, as you say, fearless, life's going at a million miles an hour, you were doing all crazy things, speaking to Kevin Hart, traveling the world, Laid in America, all these things.
Laid in America.
Oh, what a time. What a time to be alive.
We should have a Laid in America section.
We should. We'll get into it in a second. But when did it start really popping off for you? And when did the money side of things start changing your life? Because obviously YouTube at that point, monetization started coming in and it came in quite big. What was that like for you on a personal level and when did things all change?
It wasn't like an overnight thing where I had something go viral. I think there was enough of a ramp up period where even though I think what happened for me first is the audience got really big. Not overnight again, as I said, I had 2 years with 1,000 subscribers or less. And then it went to kind of like 100,000 in like the next few months and then eventually, 1 million within a year and then all of a sudden 5 million and so on. But then it took a while for the brands to follow. So, we knew we had this very special thing, but it wasn't really, the money wasn't kind of the defining factor of the success. And also, even when I'd, go out in the real world, at the time, most of my audience was probably like at school. They were like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And so, you go to a nightclub and so on and you talk to someone and they would have no idea who you were and they'd even ask you what you did and I'd, back then I'd be embarrassed to say YouTube. I would kind of say, I'm in the advertising industry or I make, I'm a producer, whatever I could come up with. And so we kind of had this, even though we had this success, it was almost like fake. It was like our own secret success, which I think kept me very kind of motivated to try and do more. And, you know, my goal with a lot of the businesses I've built is to help creators become part of the mainstream. But the money did eventually come. And, you know, my family, we've always survived quite well. I'm not saying we had absolutely nothing, but money was always a big worry. And so I've always, ever since, you know, money's come into my life, I've never gone, oh, I'm going to buy this, this, and this. I basically try to, you know, use the money to create more. And hopefully one day hand that over to my family and also make a difference, especially in South Africa where I'm from. So, really, I think about money as a tool to create more money, which hopefully I'm going to make some good decisions with that will help other people.
And so then when did it peak for you? Like, what was the highest, and maybe it was Late in America. What was the peak of everything?
I'm trying to think. I don't, firstly, one thing you'll learn about me is my memory is shocking. But myself and Joe kind of touring, we ended up all the way in New Zealand.
Was that like the Manila trip as well, right?
Yeah, we went to Manila.
Joe talked about that.
Yeah. So, like, you know, having police escorts, you know, just going around the world and having viewers waiting at airports. I think that was pretty crazy. But luckily for me, I think other people like Joe went on to have more mainstream success. I was a bit skeptical of trying to do any sort of, you know, I did try the acting thing. That was fun. But then I was
thrived in the acting game.
I thrived. Yeah. And, but then I kind of like realized I was happy with this like being a creator and the success that came with that. And then I became really obsessed with how can I do this behind the scenes. And so I'd say it kind of peaked, and then maybe within a year or two, I started thinking like, okay, I don't think I'm growing anymore as a creator. What is my actual talent in life? It's not being an actor. It's not being a musician. It's not a dancer.
Debatable.
I felt like, thank you. I felt like my talent was collaboration, and I felt like business was a perfect place to use that.
Yeah, because I was thinking is obviously, you've gone on this incredible peak. You are, one of the top creators in the country on YouTube in terms of scale, in terms of fame, in terms of everything, really, on all metrics. But then you quit everything, and that's, I think, one of the most interesting parts about your story, that you've been able to have a huge amount of success, which we'll get into in this next chapter of your career in business, but it meant quitting. So what was it like to quit? When did you make that decision, and what led to the decision to stop?
I wish I could claim I had this whole planned out and I said I'm going to quit, and then I took the risk to do the next thing. But I think, firstly, with YouTube and becoming a professional YouTube, it wasn't like I took this massive risk. It kind of started working and I was like, shit, let me just double down on this. And the same thing with business. It was like it started working before I quit. And so I think quitting is important, but having a fairly solid platform to jump onto before you jump off of the other one is important too. Ben Jeffries came to me with the idea of Influencer.com. So he's my co-founder in around 2017. And that's when we kind of really went for it with that. And we raised some capital, started employing people. And I think by 2019, things had started to really work. And it was around then, actually just before lockdown as well, that I was really struggling with like trying to do both Influencer.com, MVE, which is Margravine, the management company, and a few other things that I'm involved in while also being a creator. And then I think, I took the break, and then lockdown happened. I was like, now I'm just going to focus on the businesses. There's a lot of people who rely on these companies, it's their job. And whereas obviously being a creator, I love that. I had to focus on this for a bit, and I never thought, no, I'm done with creating. I'm just like, I'm going to stop for now, and then 2 or 3 years pass, and it looks like I quit, which I guess I have.
Yeah, and when you did, in terms of what those businesses were, can you break down the different companies that you started?
Yeah.
Which one took off the most? How was it in that period of, I guess, 2019, you having two main businesses, some other side things, and then your channel?
Influencer.com is basically a platform that connects brands and creators at scale. So we work with really large global brands like people like Google, Amazon, tourism boards, to help them with their influencer marketing. So we're kind of representing the clients. We have over kind of 13,000 creators on the platform who sign up to do those brand deals. And then we'll go to either our creators on the platform or creators off platform or managers like yourself and get them brand deals for their clients. And then separately to that, I have a company called MVE, which was Margravine, which I started with Joe Sugg, which we launched with a company called IMG, which is a global kind of business. You might know IMG Models or IMG Academy and so on. And that's more of we only represent the talent. So Influencer representing mostly brands at scale. MVE very much kind of 360 degrees talent management. And I love doing both of those things. And I like the fact that they're separate as well.
Yeah, and actually two separate client bases, even though a lot of people think that influencer agencies represent the talent. They don't. They represent the brands and the navigation with talent, whereas you've got both sides of that covered,
Exactly. Right? And sometimes some of the influencer agencies and what influencer does, sometimes they try and do both. My personal opinion is it's good to separate it so there's that conflict. I'm very proud to be part of Influencer because I feel like we're helping creators. So when we say we're representing brands, that doesn't mean we're trying to screw over creators. The way to represent brands correctly is to have a great relationship with creators. But the businesses are definitely separate in that regard. And then a few years later, Influencer now has like 150 people working there. It's a pretty global business. Revenues are big, profit is good right now. Like, touch wood, we're flying. That gave me kind of the ability to also go off with a guy called Sasha Koletsky, based on my experiences as an entrepreneur and as a creator, to launch a fund, a VC fund. And Sasha's also my cousin, and he has a big background in private equity. And that's kind of the most recent thing that I'm really focused on, which is it's called Creative Ventures, and we invest in startups in the consumer internet space.
And similar to your point before, I think on, you made money through AdSense, you then leveraged that money to build other things. Was that Influencer then and the success of that gave you the capital to then start putting it into things like Creative Ventures?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The money from it as a creator, I've always... I wasn't like a Mr. Beast when I was a creator, and he's a genius. Like the fact that he reinvested so much of his money and scaled his business.
Yeah.
I never really did that as a creator. I kind of, all the money I made, I just put into safe assets like property or some stocks and so on. Mm. And then when it came to Influencer, we raised capital from outside sources. So I didn't put my own capital into that. But when it came to Creative Ventures, the reason we were able to actually launch the fund, I kind of made it sound like I had a successful company and Sasha's very smart, and then we launched a fund. It was actually a lot of work before that where I used also some of the money I had from being a creator and a bit of money making from Influencer. But, with a company like Influencer, you're making money, but you're not trying to take the money out. Yeah. You're trying to build it up. So most of the money from being a creator, I started investing in startups alongside other creators. And so we invested in a few companies people might know, but the biggest company we invested in that had an exit is called Faceit. They merged with another company a couple of years ago and sold together for 1.5 billion, of which Faceit was worth 500 million. Wow. And we'd put money in. So it was very lucky. I was speaking about...
And this is before Creative Ventures.
This is just kind of before Creative... We started raising capital for Creative Ventures, but those sorts of results helped us.
One thing that I've sort of seen as a bit of a thread in some of the conversations, but it's so interesting when you talk about going into the world of VCs, which is a whole world in and of itself, right? With all of its challenges, as well as going into influencer marketing, as well as talent management. You're doing all these incredible things. One thing that I've noticed from previous conversations you've had is around like imposter syndrome and you feeling out of place in those worlds. But also, as you said, you sort of had a sort of period of insecurity where you were struggling to find your feet. What was that period like? How did you find coming into these new areas and arenas, which as a creator, you never touched really before? What was that like?
Yeah, so I knew that the reason I was getting these opportunities was because I was a creator. It wasn't because I was some genius who should be, running a company. That gave me a lot of insecurity in the beginning because that's how I felt, and I'm pretty sure that was the truth. But over time, I had to use that insecurity and use that anxiety to put in more effort, put in more time to learn how to not feel like that. And the only way I was going to stop feeling like that was actually to become good at what I was doing. These things take time. You got to keep feeling shit to start feeling better. And I start now, when I'm scared of something and I'm fearful of something or I'm insecure about something, I kind of want to do it because I know that's the only way I'm going to get rid of that feeling. In hindsight, I now realize I was actually providing information and sharing stuff that maybe no one else could within those businesses, and maybe that's hopefully part of our success. But at the time, it didn't feel like that. So I think both learning more and then also realizing my own perspective and maybe my less kind of formal education and route is actually what businesses need. And having that formal, going through the ranks in the same way as everyone else is great, and it's good to have. And I've also hopefully surrounded myself with people like that. But you want a bit of both. You want someone who's going to, as I said in the very beginning of this conversation, take maybe risks and do things that you probably wouldn't do if you knew everything.
Yeah.
And then you also want the other person on the other side saying, no, be careful with this one. This is a bit much.
Yeah.
So it's with influencer, the example is quite good. It's like Ben, my co-founder, is the CEO. He is a visionary as well. I'm not going to say he's not, but he's very much like, day to day, making sure now is working. And then I'm trying to think about the crazy ideas, and 10 of them will be shit, but then the one that works could be amazing.
Yeah. So from your experience with navigating imposter syndrome and trying to find your place in business coming out of this world of content and creativity, what would be your advice to people who might be struggling with that same thing? Obviously, there are many creators now who are probably looking, you manage a ton, right?
Yeah.
Who are probably looking at the space as I would be if I was a creator and worrying a little bit about the prospects in terms of channel revenue, the need now to diversify with your own businesses, but also with working maybe for other companies too, right? So there's going to be a lot more creators now moving into business. A lot more people, I think, are getting more into entrepreneurship. It's more popular than ever before. Yeah. What would be your advice to those people who are transitioning fields to kind of navigate some of that?
Yeah. Be on time is a really, I think you're going to be like, why? I think like people view you as a reputation as a creator by your audience, and that's one thing. But I think a lot of creators, they're brilliant creatives, and they're very entrepreneurial, but you also have to make sure when you go into this part of the world and you go into the other side that you're super timely, you're super kind, you're super organized. You're trying your best to make sure that, I'm not saying become like everyone else, but learn the language, spend the time meeting as many people as possible. And I think, again, some creators, like maybe because of the fame and maybe because of the early success, they can become kind of closed off to meeting people because, it's just, I think that's what happens with celebrities sometimes. And I think when you're doing a business, you got to be open to meeting as many people as possible. Not only the people who you think are going to help you right now, but also the people you could potentially help who maybe will help you one day in the future. And so I take so many meetings, and I mean, they don't all have to be in person. You can just do kind of a 30-minute Zoom call. And I've also been so surprised with some of the amazing people I've met who I was like, why the hell are they meeting me? And I'm realizing actually they're doing the same strategy I'm doing.
100%.
They're just meeting as many people as possible, and it doesn't all work out. But you're being nice to people, so one day they'll be nice to you. And secondly, the best new things and the best new ideas are going to come from the bottom sometimes. They're not always going to come from the top.
The amount of times I have meetings and I'm like, oh, kind of don't really want to be on this call. Or let's keep it to half an hour, whatever it might be. And you jump on, and you might even, I've sometimes don't even know who I'm speaking to. It'll just be in the calendar. It'll jump on. It'll be the best meeting ever. Or there'll be something that somebody says, and you go, hang on a minute, we've just got this thing over here that might be perfect for you. Yeah. I completely agree. My mindset, fully in alignment with yours, is say yes to the meetings. Just do them, because what's the harm in spending 30 minutes talking to somebody? Because actually something probably brilliant will come from it. And from the weirdest things, often you get pockets of amazing opportunity, I found.
Exactly. And I think there's also, there's something about being a creator where you are very worried about making mistakes based on, the fact that your reputation is everything. You rely on brands and your audience for a living. And then you've got to learn to start taking a bit more risks when it comes to like starting stuff. And I'm not saying be careful with financial risks and financial products. I'm not saying go into crypto and take crazy risks there, but you've got to, I love the saying, like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I think that goes back to the meetings, but it goes back to so much in business, is like, the idea of perfecting something before you release it is just so crazy to me. Just try something, fail quickly, and move on to the next thing. And I think being a creator, some people want to make sure they're like thinking about every possible thing that can go wrong. And I'm very much like, don't worry so much. Like, I know it feels like the world cares about everything you're saying because you have this intense audience, but the majority of mistakes you make, if they're not like from a really nasty, evil place, I think it's okay. And you got to be open to that too.
Yeah. Interestingly, as a quick pivot, like, how has the space changed? Because it's shifted so much, right? And I think your generation of creator, from the conversations I've had and from my understanding of the space, had maybe more freedom to express without as much pressure necessarily from the platform going, this is never
You're
gonna
like,
cut
Casper, that's
through.
easy for you to say,
Well,
but the Daily Mail
listen.
ain't going to pick up your shit.
Listen, like, I'm no creator, right? However, what's interesting
It's
now
true.
is I look at creators today and like the levels of you can never do a bathtub video. Not that that's the song, but you can never do that kind of video today and get anywhere, even if you had 1 million subs.
Yeah.
So what's your view on the way that maybe YouTube has shifted and how modern creators can combat perfectionism? Because I see it in so many creators, perfectionism, where it's like they struggle to put a video out because the algorithm pressure,
it sucks.
and the pressure of retention, all these things is so high.
Yeah, 100%. And I almost worry that some content is becoming so, for me, boring because it's trying to perfect the algorithm. As someone who's maybe getting slightly older and I'm boring now, maybe I want something that's not so edited. I want something that's a little bit more kind of authentic and maybe slower paced, so I don't feel like my mind's racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But when it comes to these creators now, it's just, I can't necessarily sit down here and say that I've had the exact same experience they've had. They've had to really fight. Whereas I think when we started, there was this moment where if you knew the right people and you were, making content consistently, you could be part of that wave, and you could have a lot of people just came up together, and then a lot of people who you're like, what is their thing? Oh no, they're just part of this wave,
moment,
and I was part of that, and so I mean, I'm just amazed by some of the levels in which these creators, when I speak to them, some of the science that goes into it now, and I love learning as much as I can. I love advising my talent, but at the end of the day, like, if you want to make it today, it's not how it was when I did it. It's seriously like you're competing with the best in the world. It's like becoming a professional footballer. I feel like it's the most sought after career.
Yeah.
More people want to be like creators than astronauts.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna have some authentic breakthroughs who win the lottery, but the kind of the other group who are gonna make it are just gonna be the hardest, most scientific kind of creators there are. So
I think it's so hard now, almost to a point where, as you're saying, because you've lost that ability to maybe express in the way you used to express, what even is the space anymore? Like, are you just satisfying the algorithm? How many true creators can exist and thrive in this space? In a way, not many, handful perhaps, but I do worry about how the space evolves and moves, because I think the platforms dictating creativity so heavily leads to ultimately like a sterile creative environment where everyone is just trying to make it work because they've almost placed their bet on this industry to make money, and if they've been successful, made any money, they need to keep that up. The only way you can keep that up is by satisfying the ruling algorithm, which seems to dominate all.
So probably why I kind of said peace, but look, we can talk about like what's getting loads of views and what's like the big kind of mainstream stuff, but I do also think we have to caveat with the platforms also have their different categories and they know what you want.
Yeah, and maybe because there's so much content, there's room on a platform maybe like TikTok especially. There's room for more to get visibility, right? I think YouTube maybe a little bit harder.
Yeah, it's strange. I think that I definitely feel like TikTok knows what I want more than YouTube. I feel like I spend more time looking for what I want on YouTube, whereas on TikTok, the first thing I see is there.
100%. And likelihood, because the reach is so much higher, because there's, it has a greater level of discoverability. You can find it more. The numbers, even on stuff which might seem really niche, is actually massive.
Yeah, exactly.
So going back to this sort of principle of quitting or saying no to things, which I sort of bucket together. Have there been any other times? Obviously, a big point is, as you just said, right? Maybe why you dipped was partly because of this slightly, how would I describe it? This over algorithmic focus on platforms that make it quite hard for creators to survive unless you're chasing the week on week treadmill and everything else. That was one moment. Have there been any other moments in your career since then where you've said no to big things, or you've quote unquote quit, that have defined your next stage or your next step?
Yeah, I'm very much, I'll try something quickly, and if it fails, I'll kind of like push it under the rug. But of the big things I've done since then, I'm sticking at them still. And I think I've been, obviously there's some investments that haven't gone perfectly, but when you're investing in 20 companies, you know that's going to happen. So luckily, touch wood, right now, there's nothing I've kind of recently quit. There's been projects we've done within companies and things we've tried, but there's nothing big that comes to mind. And I think that's because all the big things have only become big because we've done a lot of A/B testing and then we've doubled down on those. So,
but that mindset that you're talking about there is quitting on a micro scale, right? And
exactly.
I think to your point, I think you say it quite confidently because it's just part of your world, but it's quite difficult to do that. The point of you said it, try something, do it quickly. If it fails, move on. You're constantly, in a way, quitting things that don't work. Why is that so important to have that mindset? Because again, like, I completely agree, and it's something that we try and employ with everything we do, with the Sidemen, everything we do with Arcade, everything is about try it, get something out, see how it goes, and then shift and pivot. If a strategy like for us recently with Ghost Kitchens, with Sides, that didn't work. Ghost Kitchens were not at the level we wanted, so we had to quit. We've shut them all. We've now entering into brick and mortar at scale, for example. So are there, why is that such a powerful tool?
I mean, it's just because if anyone could sit there and say they know what everyone wants and what everyone wants to buy and what everyone's going to do with their lives in advance, that they would be, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or whatever, or way bigger. Like, if everyone knew exactly where things were going to go, they could do anything. So because we don't know that, the best we have is testing little things and then doubling down on things that work. And like I play poker.
I've never played poker in my life.
Really? Okay. Well, it's a really interesting game. I think there's so many aspects of it that I feel like obviously poker's the only kind of gambling game where you're not necessarily the underdog, because if you're actually good at it, based on your table, over time you'll win. You got to play some hands and lose some money along the way, but if you keep up and you have a good strategy, you should eventually win. And so I think, sometimes with poker you have the best hand in the world, and so that could be in business. You have the best idea in the world, and then the flop comes out, which is like the next 3 cards. And that might be the market, and it's completely awful, and you might have the best hand, but someone else is going to win the hand, so you actually have to fold, and you have to be able to do that. And then sometimes you might have a really kind of mediocre idea or mediocre hand, and the flop and the market's perfect. And so I think a lot of business isn't necessarily the idea or the team. I think those are obviously important and I think you're more likely to win than not if you have the right team. But I think like the kind of 60 to 70% of something's success is the market and the timing and all that, and that's something you can't predict exactly. And so you got to just get involved, see how people react, how the market thinks, and then double down if you think you've got a winner, and then be prepared. Even if there's also a lot of, I could sit here in a year and be like really embarrassed because maybe things haven't gone to plan. Because I can't control, and I'm okay with that. I can't control it, and so hopefully when things, everything happens, and hopefully the success so far, I'll never sit here and be like, I knew that was going to happen because I did X, Y, and Z. All I could say is I had a strategy, and sometimes things were going to fail and sometimes they're going to work out, but overall it worked out. And so that's why you should play poker. Join my poker night.
Mate, you need to teach me. I'm blank, so I will definitely lose a lot. It's fun when you're when you're the best on the table. It's there we go. That's why you host them, right? Yeah, exactly. So going back to setting up these companies, then obviously let's talk about MVE, Margravine, as a good case study and example. You're dealing with creators. Waves of talent. Managing talent is hard at scale with big rosters, and not that you have a huge. You've always kept it, I think. Carefully managed. But there must have been a lot of times, and also you're teaching as well, right? You're helping to coach your people on your roster, how to say no to things, how to quit in a small way. Have there been any examples or stories you can talk about of either you guys as a duo pivoting or changing or saying no to things that have, or either for you guys or for your talent that have helped to shape or determine the future in a positive way?
It's a really good question. I mean, with our talent at MVE, the reason I think a lot of them like it is because we are backed by IMG, and so we never started the business going day one we need to make tons of money. There was always room for us just to grow the business. So our talent all know, and we're very clear that if there's a deal they don't want to do, or if they want to take time without doing deals, that's fine. We're here to help them and to support them, and we're working for them. And so we're always really open about that. So there's tons of things people say no to. It's actually quite interesting. this maybe doesn't answer your question correctly, but it's an interesting thing that maybe I don't know if anyone remembers the company Vessel. It was a big startup. It was trying to rival YouTube. It was basically you were gonna window your videos on Vessel kind of 3 days early, and then fans could pay like $10 to get that. And I know that doesn't sound crazy now, but back then, like, people were like, kind of. Firstly, viewers were like, why are we paying to see the same content early? And I get that. And so a lot of creators were also worried, what if so many of their fans decide to pay for the content early that it destroys like the first group of people who usually watch their content and then hurts their videos doing really well, because we know how the algorithm works. And what if a viewer sees it on Vessel and then goes to YouTube and then
what if someone just leaks it, right?
Or what if someone leaks it? Exactly. So a lot of people said no to it. And I know you asked me this question about saying no to things, but I guess maybe it goes back to me. I say yes to a lot of things. And my view was it's a really, it's a lot of money that I could do to, I could secure a lot of my future by doing this. Who knows how long YouTube's going to last. But also my view was I didn't feel like it was going to work. But they were offering this massive check. And I was like,
to basically jump on it and
just to do it, but you could also do YouTube. It didn't affect your YouTube. All you have to do is 3 days early. And so I'd make my videos. I actually had to change nothing about my day. I would just upload it to Vessel.
And get paid a bag for it.
And I was kind of right, because viewers didn't actually, they didn't care. They're like, cool, it's on there. We're not going to pay for it. Cool. I'm going to watch it normally. They just waited. Kind of a year later, it all stopped, and I was like, "Fuck!" Luckily I said yes to that because it was no one got hurt in the process. And I was able to secure my future and feel a lot more confident to take other risks. Something maybe I should have said no to. There was this thing called Hello World. I don't know if you've ever heard about Hello World.
I vaguely remember Hello World. Yeah, go on.
So that was it was an idea whereby we wanted to create our own kind of like VidCon or Summer in the City. Again, my memory is always not the best, so just bear with me.
No, it's okay.
But they basically came up with this. They really did want to make something special. Honestly, I know it's easy for me to say. It just wasn't. It didn't go to plan, right?
Yeah.
And I remember there was a lot of like backlash, like creators trying to like exploit their viewers to make a quick buck and stuff. And honestly, we wanted to create a business. We wanted to create something cool. We also wanted to make money. We wanted everyone to have a good experience. But that was a failure. And I remember at the time feeling like really, bad. I now know that firstly, that team obviously wasn't right for it. But also the level of detail I went into it, I needed to put more detail. I needed to be more across things in future. And I learned from that. And so then I can bring that to the next thing.
Yeah. And other things now, interestingly, with all of the experience you've got, I mean, you've got huge amounts of experience in terms of companies winning, losing, what works, what doesn't work. You having your own businesses, successes, failures, challenges within them. Are there ever things that you look back at your old sort of era, if you will, before your entrepreneurship period, and you say, right, if I'd done things this way or this way, things would have been very different, or I would have maybe approached my team slightly differently, my scaling slightly differently, etc.
I think I would have made more videos, actually. I think I only made one video a week, and it's crazy. Like, the videos were getting 10 million views. And I would just then spend the next 3 days, like I was like 19, 20, I'd be like, just chilling a little bit. I wasn't like super... I was one of those creators who wasn't like the scientific creator who would make it today. I was like people just, for some reason, again, a big part of it was the network and so on I was a part of, but people were just interested in the videos, and we had like a really authentic, fun thing going. And I think people liked the fact that we weren't like this machine. We were real people just uploading videos once a week, living in our house, having a party. And so on. But I think I was so scared of not getting like 5-10 million views or whatever it was at the time. And I always wanted to get to that next thing, that I would make sure that I didn't upload often. And I think in hindsight, that wouldn't really matter. And I could have, again, maybe learned more, taken more risks, and not put so much pressure on every single video.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on now is, throughout your whole career, and I think this is also your point around how creators can add value in the world of business, is that your mindset around collaboration is actually quite unique. And I think in business especially, there are some people who are great collaborators, probably the people who really do well are, but a lot of people also aren't as collaborative. They're slightly more guarded. But your view has always been collaboration. Actually, you took that into your businesses through working with Ben, through working with Joe, and through working with your cousin, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say is the power of collaboration in business?
Yeah.
Why is it so important? How has it allowed you to do all the different things you've done? Because without you collaborating, you'd never really have done any of these things, right?
So the power of collaboration is you can, 1 + 1 = 5 or 3 or whatever it is, because you can do more together. And so, firstly, I wouldn't be able to do multiple things unless we had hyper focus within the businesses. And I'm not necessarily, that's not my role, is to be hyper focused. It's to actually be out there learning about new things, bringing new ideas and meeting new people. And so it's good that I'm across multiple things. It actually helps, I feel like, all the businesses more than if I was just solely sitting there every day doing my one-to-ones and managing people. It's allowed me personally to be open to giving people the space to do their jobs really well rather than trying to do everything perfectly myself.
From all these companies that you've seen, the success stories of all of your investments, because I'd imagine you probably learned more. Well, I'm sure you learned a ton from your own businesses, but I'd imagine you learned a lot from the investments in the companies at scale because you see so many patterns.
Yeah.
If you could pick one overriding lesson that you've taken from your investments that has helped to shape the way that you view business now that maybe you didn't know before, what would it be?
So this is going to be, it's not the nicest thing to say in the world, but someone's passion in something isn't going to mean it's going to work or not. And by that, I mean, you get a lot of people who have they're very passionate about a certain space and they think because of their passion, they can launch a really good business. And I've learned that actually just really good operators in the right market at the right time, obviously I want them to be passionate as well, but it's not, it's so much more. Having a business isn't just, we're in a coffee business, so you have to be a coffee expert.
No.
If you're a business expert and you can learn about coffee, that's way more important. I'm learning, and again, I hope it doesn't I don't want it to take away from when I was younger and I was like, oh, I love something, I'm just going to go and do it.
Yeah. You're a grown man now.
I'm starting
you see the world.
I'm starting to realize there's so much more to it than what you love and your heart. And I want the heart there too, but I think ultimately what I'm saying here is be careful not just to blindly follow something because you like it yourself.
100%.
And because you think the product is really tasty. There's so much more to it. And yes, if you have a passion in life, you do that. And I have certain passions, but if you want to make money and make sure you can support the people you're hiring and pay back your investors, you also got to have a hell of a business plan and the ability to execute on that passion.
So the passion, the heart has to be in the process, not so much the idea.
Exactly, because again, I think even being a YouTuber, people have this idea of what being a YouTuber is, and they're like, I love that. But actually being a YouTuber might be spending a ton of time editing or a ton of time producing.
It's the process,
or a ton of time making your content. And so do you actually like that process? And so you hit the nail on the head there. And some of the best businesses, we've invested in, they have an incredible, they're having an incredible impact on the world, and their fans love them. But the people behind the businesses are just really passionate about the process itself.
How do we build from here to here? How do we make this work? Exactly. Not necessarily make my idea become the most popular idea on the planet.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also I think it's a healthy emotional detachment from the idea, so that you can also pivot. Because I've seen it a lot, right, where people will get, as you say, stuck in an idea. It's the best thing in the world, and then any criticism towards that idea, any sort of pivoting away, which you might need to make it work in the market, almost becomes like a personal attack on the person, when it has to have that separation.
And I think maybe the reason people think if I'm passionate about something and I love it and it's going to work is because we tend to read the success stories, and some of those success stories might be people rewriting the history of what they actually, maybe they say they always loved something, but actually they just wanted to start a business.
Was Jeff Bezos, maybe he was, right? I haven't read all the books about Jeff Bezos and early Amazon. Was he overly passionate when he was sat in the garage about necessarily Amazon? Maybe he was, maybe he's the exception. But actually I'd imagine it was the fact that he could see the building of Amazon and the process of making that happen as the thing that motivated him, not necessarily Amazon in and of itself. And then obviously you come out and you go, I had this big vision. Maybe you did, but more realistically, I'd imagine it's no, we want to get from here to here to here to here to here. That's the bit that gets you fired up. What would be your one piece of advice to a creator? It could be somebody who you guys manage or somebody you meet on the street. If somebody says to you, I'm trying to build, not even just a creative, I'm trying to build a business in 2023 and I want to make money online, I want to express myself creatively, what would be your one bit of advice to them?
just literally start now, like make as many mistakes as you can, and don't try and overthink it. Especially with the world we live in now with content and things like TikTok, like you don't have to perfect it for it to be good. People just, sometimes something you have no idea can be the biggest hit. So just try loads of things, see what happens, and then learn from both those mistakes and what's starting to gain traction, and then just double down on that.
Yeah, yeah. And who is your favorite creator right now?
Oh wow, that's a great question. So right now, it's actually a group of creators, and I don't necessarily love them as individuals, but I love the content they create. It's called the All In Podcast. I'm not sure if you've come across it, but it's just this group of fairly strange guys who have fairly controversial views, but they don't always agree with each other. And I just love the arguments they have between each other. And I also love the fact that they're constantly talking about like the biggest news in the world. And I don't always agree with their takes, but I feel like I always learn something from their podcast, but I also laugh a lot at them fighting. So
Yeah, I'm on it now.
Yeah.
These guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. It's the thing. It's always, they're the guys, I always see them on TikTok, right? And it's like, billionaire tells, they always cap it with like, billionaire tells secret to X, or it's in every single video, because obviously, but I don't know if that actually works, because some of the videos where they do that, you think, oh, this should pop, but actually the views are kind of low. I don't know if they think, oh, well, we're billionaires, so we've got it 100%.
I think that might be other people recreating their content. Maybe. They don't really talk about that so much. It might also be other people. They're usually talking, like, I mean, it will be, this week they'll talk about why Elon Musk changed Twitter to X.
Yeah.
And they happen to know him.
Yeah. I was at dinner with, I was at dinner with Elon last night. It's like, guys. Yeah, they're great.
But yeah, it's just, I'm finding more and more, what I like to hear in conversations is conflict rather than everyone just agreeing and so on. And so I love that.
Yeah, love it. Well, Casper, thank you. We could honestly talk all day.
Well, thank you. This has gone by it felt like 10 minutes.
I know. Well, thank you so much, mate. And keep smashing it.
Cheers, thank you.
So that was Casper Lee. What an incredible episode. I love talking to him about everything he's been up to and about his amazing journey to date. But most of all, I love learning about his theory on quitting and saying no to things, which seems to be a bit of a superpower for him in everything that he does. His whole attitude around, if something doesn't work, move on, is really powerful. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. This is a guy who's also invested in some hugely successful startups now, as well as having his own career that he let go because it wasn't right for him at the time. And I think there's so much to learn from this episode, but the thing that really hit me was the idea of testing. Small testing. Make sure that you try something in its smallest form, and if it doesn't work, move on. If it does, you're onto a winner. That theory of being ready to move, being adaptable, seems to be at the heart of Casper's story, and I think it's a real reason for his success today. So thank you so much, as ever, for listening to this episode of Unboxed. Make sure to subscribe and check it out wherever you get your podcasts.